story, otherwise you'll say you came for Yud Shvat and I didn't tell you a story. Yosef Shidler will already give me over my head. Since Yosef likes the stories, he prints Sforim, you should support his Sforim. Children's stories, he's doing something very important. Tzaddikim, stories of Tzaddikim, old Tzaddikim, not just Lubavitch, other Tzaddikim. I heard this last night, so this is fresh, with one of our Rebbes. So Shalom, this is for you. Rabbi Weingarten.
Oh. Yeah.
But this is the story. 1945. Rabbi Weingarten, Avram Weingarten, our third grade Rebbe, and Zalman Schechter, who later, started all kinds of interesting things in Judaism. We're not going to go into that now. I'm working on a book about it. I'm sure it's going to attract a lot of people. But Al Kaponim, they were in yeshiva, ending yeshiva, they were in yeshiva, and it was the draft. Everyone knows in the 40s there was the draft. The army, the war and everything, the draft. So Bacharim were finding ways to get out. They were called to the draft, downtown Brooklyn. The line went for blocks. Hundreds of people. You have to go in, be checked by doctors. If you were healthy, you have to go to the army. If you're an authentic yeshiva bacher, if you're a real yeshiva bacher, and you're learning now, then you're exempt from the army. And they already had people, because they knew there was gefährlich draft dodging, as you know. People, lied, made up mices and yalla Sachen. And so they planted people there to check out who is true, who is not true. They were scheduled to go on a Thursday. And they happened to meet the Rebbe. The Rebbe at the time, our Rebbe was called Ramash. Reb, M, first name, Schneerson, Ramash. So they met the Ramash, and the Ramash said, he told them, we're going Thursday, we have to go. So he says, why don't you come see the Rebbe, the Freirdiker Rebbe, the Balas, he led the yard side, today's the yard side of the Freirdiker Rebbe, Yosef Yitzchak, come see him for bracha Wednesday night. The night before. Sure. They come Wednesday night, and they walk up, and they knock on the door, and the door is locked, and the Rebbe's wife, Rebbe Chaya Mushke, his wife, comes to the door, and she says, it's not a Yechidus night. There were certain nights where the Freirdiker Rebbe saw people privately called Yechidus. It's not a Yechidus night. She says, but your husband told us to come. She says, okay, I'll ask my husband. She goes back in, comes back, says, yeah, he says you should come in. They come in, and he says, now, okay, you can go into the room with the Freirdiker Rebbe. There's an apartment above 770, where you live. So Zalman Schechter was a Kohen. So Avram Weingarten, Rabbi Weingarten, our Rebbe, tells Schechter, you go first, you're a Kohen. And if Kohen gets Kedima. He goes in, and the Rebbe vinsht him on. The Rebbe gives him a bracha. Comes out. Now it's Weingarten's turn to go in. He goes in. The Rebbe gives him brachas. And then the Rebbe says at the end, before he's about to go out, in Zeir Eigen, in their eyes, so as to nicht sein gesund. In their eyes, it should appear as though you aren't healthy. And the Rebbe, the Freirdiker Rebbe, had a very beautiful, broad, as tzelacht, he gave this broad smile. Weingarten always said he remembers that, in other words, what kind of bracha is he giving? You should be sick. That's a bracha. In Zeir Eigen, in their eyes, you should be sick. So they go Thursday. And Weingarten goes in. And someone's standing at the side. There's a doctor, and there's someone on the side. And before the doctor starts examining, this guy says to him, I think he was a psychologist, psychiatrist, he says, I see you're a yeshiva bacher. He says, yeah, I'm a yeshiva bacher. So he says, what Masechta are you learning? Ksupas, Gittin, whatever. And he starts talking up and learning with him. And he knew, interesting, okay. Takes his paper, they have to start marking off. And he says, I want to ask you, Mr. Weingarten, I want to ask you, do you go to movies? Do you go to movies? He says, a bacher in yeshiva, in Babich yeshiva, go to movies? I don't go to movies. No. He says, do you read comics? Comic books. I don't know why. Do you read comic books? He says, comic books? I'm trying to understand the piece of Gemara Rashi Tosfos. And then he says, and of course, I'm sure, you have a girlfriend. He says, a girlfriend? I have a girlfriend. What, are you out of your mind? Of course I don't have a girlfriend. He says, okay, not normal. He writes down, not normal, out. He didn't have to see the doctors, goodness. Okay, and Rabbi Weingarten turns around and he says, where is Zalman Schechter? Where's his chaver? Doesn't see him. He looks there. The doctors, the Chavre, they say, Mr. Weingarten, out. We have 150 people waiting on a line. You got to go. Sorry, but my friend's not here. Too bad. I have no idea where he is. Okay. Comes to Yeshiva, Rabbi Mentlik, the Rosh Yeshiva, greets him. He says, no, how did it go? He tells him that what happened. And the Freirdiker gave him a bracha, and the next day he says it's not normal. Obviously the bracha worked. And he says, this is misfreilach, And he says, and where's Zalman? You guys went together. Where's Zalman? He said, I don't know. Hours went by, and Zalman came. So they asked Zalman, where did you get lost? Zalman was into trachten and meditation. He was more of a maskil, an intellectual. He said, let me tell you what happened. When I came in, they told me that, you have to disrobe. You take off all your clothes because they give me your medical exam, right? So, in a private room, versteht sich. And they told me to take off my tzitzis. She says, I'm not taking off my tzitzis. My tzitzis? You want me to take off my tzitzis? No, I'm not taking off, even though you're standing in one place, and for a medical, you're allowed to take off your tzitzis. But he was so frum at the time, and he said, ich nehm nicht auf meine tzitzis. So they say, what are we going to do with you? So what he does is, he takes his tzitzis, and he throws it like this, you know what I'm saying? So now the tzitzis are not fully on his body, but over his shoulders. Good. And they start taking the x-rays of the lungs. Because you have healthy lungs. That was a main thing in those days. The tuberculosis, exactly. So Bekitzer, a picture comes out with a string, a line on the lungs. These chachamim didn't, tipship, they didn't know. So they said, this doctor, you have to go to this doctor. And so he went, and then at the end, they realized it's his tzitzis. And that's why he took him so much longer, because he had to go through the line. And he said, Rabbi Weingarten, he said, not normal, out of here. You know what I'm saying? He didn't even get to the doctors. Here, they found something with his lungs. Now they have to investigate, is it right, is it no good? So that's why he took more time. This happened, I heard this last night from a Weingarten's son, Yossi, not Shruly, Yossi, the older brother. He told me, he said, this one more maisa that he told me last night is like this. His engagement, his vart was supposed to be Yud Shvat 1951. The first yahrzeit of the Freirdiker Rebbe, Yud Shvat, right? The Rebbe passed away in 1950, the Freirdiker Rebbe. So the next year, the yahrzeit. So the night of Yud Shvat, today's already going to Yud Aleph, tomorrow, but last night, he was scared. It was a Wednesday night. It was a Tuesday night, like this year, and he was in Borough Park. He lived in Borough Park. No, I'm taking it back. It was Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat 1950. It was Shabbos. The Rebbe passed away Shabbos in the morning, at 10 to 8 in the morning. He was in Borough Park with his parents. What's a Shabbos? He's getting dressed to go to his vart in Washington Heights. His Kala, I guess, was from Washington Heights. He's going to his vart. Getting ready. Somehow the phone rings. Is that? The Freirdiker Rebbe passed away today, Shabbos, and he was a Talmud and a Gvar Nois Mensch. He says, I can't have a vart tonight. How can I go to a vart? My Rebbe passed away. Where does he go? He runs to 770. The yeshiva. That's where he was. The yeshiva bach on 770. He comes in, he sees the Ramash. He sees the Rebbe. And the Rebbe says to him, because the Rebbe knew, says, Avram, what are you doing here? What's the vart tonight? In Washington Heights. You have to be in Washington Heights, not in 770. So he says, what? You know what happened today? Your father-in-law passed away. Well, what's the question? So the Rebbe says, come. He takes him to the Shmuel of it. Shmuel was the oldest chassid at the time, and he was a smart person. He was considered the Rav in Beis Harav, for the Rebbe's household, the Rebbe's household. And the Rebbe takes Avram, and he says, Rebbe Shmuel, you isn't the Rav, and I want to get kind of your haskama, your agreement and the Rebbe says like this, I think Avram should take 2-3 guys from 770 as Chaverim. They should go to Washington Heights now, make the vart, and come back. Was Oktir, and Shmuel was a dependent guy. The Rebbe wasn't Rebbe yet. He could have told him no. He said it's a good idea, and that's what happened. That happened last night, 1950. the night of Yud Shvat, after the Istalkus, before the burial on Sunday. B'chalal, there were many yeshivas who came. Torah Vadas came. I spoke to people who came from Torah Vadas, and it was a big. I heard from Satmar Chassidim in Williamsburg, old Satmar Chassidim, and came to Miami. I met them in Miami. How in the 1940s, how many Rebbes were there in Brooklyn? 2 or 3. There was a Modlitzer Rebbe in Williamsburg. There was a Rav, I believe Yitzchak Greenwald, the Salemer. But yeah, and later the Kloisenberger came to Satmar. But in 41, 42, 43, 44, there was only in the east side, the Beyaner and the other one, right? But in Brooklyn, so the Freirdiker Rebbe of Yosef Yitzchak was the only one, and he was, more spudding, and he was older, and he was not in a wheelchair, and he had the punishment from the communists and the Nazis. So, and they told me how they went to see him, and he gave them advice, and these are staunch alte Satmar Chassidim. Was will Charis bringen that. When you see a tzaddik, and you try to be misdabik in a tzaddik, but you have to really want to be misdabik. It doesn't come from eating cholent and pizza. It doesn't come that way. Not by us. If you want to be misdabik to a tzaddik, you have to go all out, and you have to forschen, and you have to be choker, and you have to throw yourself in. And b'shas that expression we use in Lubavitch, I'm a vartzacharayin redel. If you immerse yourself in the circle, the redel, it'll catch on. It'll catch on. And Chassidus and Chassidim are reich. What do I mean reich? I don't mean reich physically. Reich. That's a good Sache. But the richness of Yiddishkeit that Chassidus brings to the world, that the Baal Shem Tov brings to the world, that not only it's a technical thing, nor it's exciting, it's animated. There's life there. And that's what the young people and the new generation needs to see. Leaders, Rabbonim, Rebbes, Rosh Hashiva, whatever they are, they're excited about what they're doing. It's not just lip service. And Daf Lebanon in them. They had this silly ad last year. You must have seen it. It was on a WhatsApp or a TikTok, one thing. With beer. It was here in Lakewater, Tom's River, with chill with beer. You don't remember that ad? Some guy drank beer and he says, "I want to knock down another 8-ounce beer to learn another piece of Gemara." You didn't see that? Oh, come on! I'm not saying it right. Black beer or something. So first, my Chavedim and I, we saw this and we said, this is ridiculous. The father was to learn Gemara because he wanted to drink beer. But at the same time, he was expressing, let's look at the other side. He was expressing a geschmack in learning a piece of Gemara. Okay, he's using a very, gashmis dikazach to express the geschmack that he has in a piece of Gemara. So you can argue, why don't you say something else? But the geschmack, the delight, the pleasure. How many people daven today and it's a boring experience? The seltzer, yeah. What was it called?
Rish's cold.
Yeah. Why are Sunni Lubavitch, these guys don't know?
Because he said beer.
Yeah, the seltzer.
Right, yeah.
He said
But Chaim, did you ever hear this? He doesn't know, and he's a yeshiva bacher. Anyway, I know Lubavitch to speak this, we saw this. Yeah, sick to go.
I bet.
Yeah.
It was just WhatsApp. I don't think it was TikTok.
But whatever it was. The kuda is the geschmack in learning, the geschmack in davening. Davening for so many people, it's so boring. So what do they do today? So we make some Karlbach minyanim and make one good. It's a good zach, no question about it. But nevertheless, the tefillah, the izdabkus from davening is a pnimis dikazach. It comes from the inside. It doesn't come from the outside. L'chaim, der Eibscher helpt mit Tage arbeiten auf sich und werden freilach und sei chsidische Jiden. L'chaim. Schau, l'chaim. Ay,